Can they walk pigs down a hallway? Can they bleed pigs? Can they take temperatures? Can they do a diagnostic investigation on diarrhea? Some of those basic things that they end up kind of learning as skills after graduation. So what we have done is develop kind of the clinical competency skill set that would be required to be proficient at veterinary medicine in the swine industry post-graduation.
So welcome everybody to today's episode of the Swine at Canada podcast. I'm Dan Columbus and I am your host for today's episode. With me today, I have Dr. John Harding, who is a professor in large animal clinical sciences at the Western College of Veterinary Medicine, which is kind of a mouthful, but get through it. So welcome to the show, John.
Thanks, Dan. Nice to be here.
Yeah. Just before we get going on the topic for today, I'll ask you to introduce yourself, just because some people might not know who you are and what you do. So we'll give them a little bit of your background.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Yep. So my background is an OVC grad, so Ontario Veterinary College from 1988. So that's in Guelph, Ontario. I spent 16 years in private practice in Saskatchewan. Most of that was spent in pigs because that was what I really wanted to do upon graduation. And then in 2004, I changed careers and joined the faculty of the Western College of Veterinary Medicine, where I've been a swine medicine professor since then and have done, the things that professors do. So lots of clinical, lots of teaching, lots of research, and some extension as well.
Working with nature and not against it. Piglets fed AX3 see significant and improved feed efficiency. Producers know the reality of needing to reduce antibiotic and zinc use. AX3 Digest is a highly digestible novel protein that promotes improved in-barn performance, piglet health, and minimizes the need for zinc in the diet. For more information, visit www.protecta.com. That's www.protecta.com.
Yeah, we'll have to have you come back on to talk about your research at some point, but
a different day.
A different day. Today's episode, though, we're going to be talking about a program that you've been developing, and I think it's very telling, or a good intro that you decided to go into swine, but this is one of the issues that you're going to be trying to address with this program. So, before we get into it, maybe just say, what the program is and what the issue is and what that you're trying to address.
Right. So the program that I'm developing is called the SMART program. So that's an acronym that stands for Swine Medicine Advancement, Recruitment, and Training. And really is designed around the recruitment and training of swine veterinarians. And really the background is that over the last 20 years in faculty, I've seen a gradual decline in the number of students that are interested, DVM students that are interested in swine medicine as career choices. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. There's generally urbanization of society these days. So there's far fewer students coming from farms or have connection to farms as parents and grandparents and uncles and aunts move off the farm and move into rural centers or urban centers. So that's one. But I think as well, there's an issue with the pig industry specifically in that it's highly technical. We've got very large barns now, and we've locked the doors down over the last 20 years. So I think there's fewer kids, even from the city or farm kids that had a few pigs in the back 50 or back 40, and fewer that have uncles, aunts, grandparents that have, small scale farms. So what we've seen is really a change in terms of less interest and really is less exposure in any sort of pig except for the type that you buy in a cellophane package in the store. So I think they just don't know that swine veterinary medicine is a career option for them. They know that there's beef in the dairies, but even other food animals are finding there's problems with number of students that are interested in those programs. So this program I'm developing is really geared partly towards undergraduate training, as well as trying to fill the void of finding more swine veterinarians for the future.
Yeah, it's a trend we're seeing, I think, in the industry as a whole, right? With just the labor shortage, and I know even with the graduate programs trying to get people interested in pursuing research in this area. So, this might be a good first step in trying to get people interested in it and into the field. Uh, you mentioned, the focusing on the undergraduate, so I think that's a good place to start with the program, because you did tell me that there's four key areas, so we can talk about each of those. So we'll start at the beginning with the undergrads, right, and what you're doing for that.
Yeah, so I think that's the starting place, as you say. And just as a bit of background before that, I'd say I don't think we're going to fulfill the needs of the swine industry or swine veterinary profession by undergraduate training. I think it's an important part of it, but looking at what we need in the future, undergraduates, at WCVM, we would graduate one or two students per year, if that are interested in swine medicine. So one of the initiatives that we've created is something called the Farmhouse Summer Student Experience Program. And that's the first pillar of the SMART program. And that's based on the premise that exposure to food animals, or pigs in this case, early in life or early in the career is the best way to get them at least interested in the program. So from my perspective, the earliest I can get them exposed to pigs is really in their first year of veterinary medicine undergraduate training. So this program is really developed around providing undergraduate first-year DVM students with an opportunity during their first summer after they enter the program to work with swine veterinarians and work in swine production units. So it's a 12-week program. Generally goes from May until late July of the first year summer. We match students that are interested with veterinary practices, swine veterinary practices across Western Canada, and then into Ontario this year as well for their summer period. And of that 12 weeks, it's typically spent 4 weeks in production units to give them that hands-on experience. And that 4 weeks would be spent kind of a week in breeding, a week in farrowing, a week in nursery, a week in grow finish, roughly. And then the remaining 8 weeks are spent really shadowing veterinarians working in the practice. So they get an understanding of pork production and what it's like to work in a farm. And then they have some understanding of what veterinarians do during their daily activities.
Yeah. So what kind of an uptake have you been getting with that part of the program?
Yeah. So we started the program in 2021. I'm just thinking back in my mind here, 2021, and ran it in 2022 as well, and had 4 students take the program at that point in time. And that's when it was really just focused on Western Canada out of WCVM. So we placed students in Manitoba and Alberta at that time. And, it was a reasonable success. Actually, Saskatchewan as well. So a reasonable success. And those students are now, one of them has graduated and went into swine practice, and 3 other ones are in 4th year this year. What we did for 2024, so this upcoming summer, is expand the program so that it is now involving 4 out of the 5 veterinary colleges across the country. So Atlantic Veterinary College and OVC in Guelph, and University of Calgary, as well as WCVM. And we've got 5 students now that are being placed across the country. So one is going from AVC into Quebec. One is going from Ontario Veterinary College, staying in Ontario. 2 from Saskatchewan are going into Manitoba. And then 1 from Calgary is staying in the Calgary area. So this year, 5 students, 4 veterinary colleges involved in the program. I think the uptake is fairly good at this point in time. We've kind of unofficially said we can support 5 students a year. So we've fulfilled our quota for this year. So we're very happy about that.
Yeah. Do you try to place them in a different province than what their home school is, or is that just the way it's working out?
It's just the way it's working out. Typically students would like to stay where they are, where they're living during the year. Obviously they've got accommodations and obligations to pay lease over the summer, so that really complicates their ability to move. So a couple from Saskatchewan are moving back home to Manitoba for the summer, so that's fine. The others are kind of staying as close as possible, but given that there's no swine industry in PEI to speak of, then we linked up Charlottetown with Quebec City, and that's kind of a close proximity. So they're as close as they can be.
Yeah, good. Okay. So I guess the next pillar I think we can talk about is the foreign trained vet residency program. Unless you wanted to talk about one of the other ones first, but I think that.
So the FTV swine residency program. So we've talked about undergraduates, DVM students fulfilling some of the need for swine veterinarians in the future, but not the entire need. So that's where the swine residency program fits in then. And the background of that is that we know we've got all sorts of professionals from other countries that are working in Canada as immigrants, but not to their professional capacity, whether it's MDs, physicians working as taxi drivers, or other things, engineers working in other trades. So we know that we have got foreign-trained veterinarians working in the swine industry that are in non-veterinary roles, either barn technicians or working with practices in some sort of role, but not to their full capacity. So this program builds on that concept that if we can retool those individuals to allow them to apply for a veterinary license, at least in swine medicine, then we can bring them up to their full capacity. So it's good for them, as well as it helps fulfill our need in the Canadian industry of needing more veterinarians in the future, swine veterinarians in the future. So we put those two things together. So more background is to become licensed to practice veterinary medicine, at least in the prairie provinces, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. The standard way for foreign veterinarians that have graduated from what we call non-accredited colleges is to do work through the National Examining Board of the Canadian Vet Medical Association on a set of 4 exams. We call them NAVLE, but there's a basic science exam, there's a national licensing exam, there's a surgical assessment, and then there's a clinical competency exam. So those exams are kind of the standard path, pretty expensive, pretty challenging for those who have not worked in general practice over the years. So a real deterrent for those who kind of have a focused interest just in swine medicine. So the alternative route to licensure is through board certification. And board certification means specialty boards. So if we can demonstrate that if any individual can demonstrate that they're a board specialist veterinarian in a discipline, so for us that's going to be in swine health management, then that's another pathway to become licensed. So this program is really based on the concept of taking these foreign-trained veterinarians who are interested in pigs and are living in Canada as Canadian citizens or permanent residents. If they can become board certified in swine health management, then they are eligible for licensure. And that is possible. It's possible because the vet medical associations in the prairie provinces have bylaws that now will allow that, as well as there is a process by which we can get them board certified through the American Board of Veterinary Practitioners. So this residency program is a 3-year residency, and it's designed to retool or retrain these individuals to bring their standards up so that they can become board certified. And we do that through the ABVP. And it kind of does it over a 3-year period. It's linked to the University of Saskatchewan to a Master of Science degree. So there's a research component as well as a clinical component. And I think one of the strengths of this program is we are not asking the residents to come to Saskatoon and spend 3 years in, Saskatoon. What we're doing is using a distributed model, so very similar to the rural physician model, where we place the residents out in rural practices in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta. They basically stay where they're working now, so we're not upsetting their family life and their community. They stay within the community, and they work with practitioners basically in the field.
Yeah, great. What kind of uptake have you seen with that program?
Yep. So I would say support from across the industry has been overwhelming at this point in time. To be honest, I don't think I've heard anybody say this is a stupid idea. Everybody I'm talking to is saying, absolutely great idea. We need to do this. Congratulations. In terms of uptake from the industry, it's been excellent. So we have donations coming in, or contributions to the program coming in from the three major pork boards: Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta, plus Western Canadian Swine Health Alliance. So we've got financial backing of the industry. We've got support of the veterinary medical associations, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. Manitoba even went to the point of updating their bylaws to allow board certification. We certainly got the support of Western College of Veterinary Medicine, who is handling the administrative side. And we have uptake from interested veterinarians, so have recruited 6 different clinical training sites across Western Canada now, and possibly expanding into Ontario as we move forward. We'll see whether that's a possibility. And then in terms of candidates for the program, we've got the potential for 8 spots now in Western Canada. 4 of those are filled. A 5th is a good possibility at this point in time. And I've got a short list of other candidates that are preparing to enter the program. They'll be kind of the second cohort that would start in July of 2025. So it has not been broadly advertised at this point in time. We're obviously being pretty selective in the candidates to make sure they meet all the admission requirements. But we will certainly fill all of the spots that we would have available in probably the first 2 cohorts of students. So pretty pleased overall.
Yeah, sounds like a good uptake so far, and well, it's widely advertised now.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm going to get a flood of applicants now.
Yeah, hopefully they're listening and they know about the program now. So that
yeah, I should just say admission requirements. Okay, a couple of things: need to be in Canada, need to be a permanent resident or Canadian citizen. And you need to have minimum 5 years work experience in the swine industry.
Okay, there we go. Maybe stem the flood a little bit with that.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the things that you mentioned that you focus on in that area, so I think it's a good segue into your theme 3 or part 3 of it, is the development of clinical competencies, right?
Yeah, clinical competency. Yeah, third pillar. So background on this. So in health sciences education, over the last decade or so, universities have been less concerned about grades. So for instance, we don't care if an MD has a 96 grade or a 70 grade. All we care about is whether they are competent to do the job. So that's kind of the background of competency. So competency testing in the veterinary education has been a big thing pushed over the last 10 to 15 years. And it's the same principle that we need to make sure you can do these skills. And so we have OSCEs, competency testing in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and maybe even 4th year for our veterinary students. And, things would be ability to perform a clinical exam on a dog, on a horse, diagnose basic diseases, do a lameness exam, things like that. The problem is that pigs don't fit the normal mold in the veterinary curriculum because it's considered a minor species. So while we have competency testing in, horses and cows and small animals, we don't have any competency testing in pigs. So that's a problem. So we train students on a theoretic basis, but when they graduate, we really have no understanding whether they know how to do the basic technical tasks that they need to in order to be swine veterinarians. Can they walk pigs down a hallway? Can they bleed pigs? Can they take temperatures? Can they do a diagnostic investigation on diarrhea? Some of those basic things that they end up kind of learning as skills after graduation. So what we have done is develop kind of the clinical competency skill set that would be required to be proficient at veterinary medicine in the swine industry post-graduation. So we started off by using a list that had been developed by University of Minnesota in their program. And it's a pretty extensive list. It had 40 to 50 items in it. many of them were kind of American based and really suited for the University of Minnesota curriculum, which is much, much different than the curriculum we have here in Canada across our different universities, which surprisingly have very similar curriculum for the most part. It is the AVC and OVC and WCVM, a fairly similar curriculum. So we started with the Minnesota list, but we had to Canadianize it. So we Canadianized it last fall through a series of surveys that I sent out to swine veterinarians in Western Canada and Ontario. Basically, a list of many different things, and I asked them to prioritize them as basic, intermediate, or advanced. So basic being, every food animal veterinarian should know these tasks. Intermediate being, every swine veterinarian should know these tasks, but maybe not a mixed animal veterinarian. And then the advanced ones would be, to be really proficient in swine medicine, you really need to know these tasks, but maybe some of them you'd be able to learn after graduation in the first couple of years, or a bit beyond what we could do, at the entry level. So, but certainly after graduation. So now I've got these three different competency lists. There's about 96 to 97 activities in total across these three different lists. And we've got then the ability to score students, and we'll set up the process by which they're evaluated either in the farmhouse program during their 12-week periods in the summer, or we'll incorporate it into one of the main forms of actually competency testing our foreign trained veterinarians that are part of our swine residency program. So that's something that we'll finish up, and we'll start to then unroll into the farmhouse program this summer, and then the foreign trained veterinary program will start shortly after that.
So based on, I get the scores on that, what would be the outcome? Like, is it like more training or deciding that this isn't where they go, or like, what's the intended outcome?
Yeah, the intended outcome would be a numerical score that, let's say, a summer student or an undergraduate DVM can have a competency list with scores, I say ranked from 1 to 4, on tasks that they have completed. And those tasks really are graded on the basis of their independence. So for instance, if we look at, let's say, bleeding grow finished pigs as an example. So a score of 0 would be never been exposed to it, have no idea. So an employer could look at that and say, oh, you do or do not know how to bleed pigs. Score 0, don't know how to bleed pigs. A score 1 would be, I've shown a student how to do that, and at least they got some introduction of understanding what it is that they need to do. And then as you get into scores 2s and 3s, it would be, I've shown them how to do it and they can do it, but I need to stand behind their back just to make sure they're getting it done. They're lining everything up right. And then a score 3 would be, they're completely independent. I can send them to a farm and know that they're going to get 80% of those animals bled without any difficulty. So we're showing complete independence at that point in time. So through these different activities and through the scores, then we'll have a matrix essentially of what they can do and how independent they are. So as a summer student moves from, early to late in the summer period, their scores may increase, or if they go summer 1 and come back to a second summer, things may increase. We could use it for graduate students as well. Foreign trained veterinarians would be the same thing. As the residency program continues, they will become exposed and competent to more tasks, as well as their level of independence will increase with individual tasks. So their scores will go up then as the program develops. And at the end of the residency, to be honest, they should have most of the tasks, even up to the intermediate and advanced level, completed.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. So I guess on that, we can move to the final pillar, your fourth pillar, with the advanced swine education program, and the continuing education part of this.
Yeah. And you're right, this is the last pillar. And this pillar really comes at it from the angle of, in undergraduate studies, we can bring students up to a certain level. And in swine medicine, the real learning begins after you graduate. We can cover the theoretic diseases and production things, but really you learn a lot in the field. In terms of diseases don't always show up as they do in the textbooks. So there's gray as well as just the practicality of learning post-graduation. So there's a void in what we do. So young early career veterinarians may express interest. They become intimidated very quickly because the industry is very technically advanced and very large. So we have this fourth pillar then to support them as they develop, their own skill sets in their early career. But it's not just for early career; it's for anybody of any stage in their career as well. So it could be mixed animal practitioners that need some boosting on swine skills. It could be early career veterinarians that need some additional help building those skills. Or it could be for older veterinarians that just want to, have more continuing education. Swine veterinarians love continuing education, so that's really neat. So we do a couple of things. Those that are interested in board certification through the ABVP, just like in the foreign trained veterinary program, we can help them with that. So whether that's helping get case reports done or logs or whatever in ABVP study plans, things like that, we can help them during that process. And we do have one veterinarian that is private veterinarian in practice now that is, going down that pathway of board certification. So we're helping him with case reports, selecting the right material and getting those case reports written up. But something more for kind of any other veterinarian is we've started a journal club, and the journal club has two different focuses. One is on a graduate teaching. So we have a journal club now that graduate students can be involved, and these would be swine interested graduate students learning how to critically critique manuscripts. We've opened that journal club up to the Canadian Association of Swine Veterinarians. So any now Canadian swine veterinarian who is interested can join that journal club. And, they're required to read the paper or encouraged to read the paper before the journal club. So we then can use their expertise to help train our graduate students. And then I think our graduate students, through that discussion, help veterinarians critically evaluate manuscripts. And as you know, there are some good manuscripts and there are some not so good manuscripts. So we can start to pull out some training there. So there's lots of opportunity for the industry and the grad students to go back and forth, as well as discussing whatever the topic of the actual manuscript is. So we have done this for 2 semesters now, fall and winter terms. Each of our terms, we have 8 papers, one every other week. Our classes are Wednesday mornings, I think at 10 o'clock Saskatchewan time, and they last for an hour and a half.
I know what it's like to do the journal clubs tonight. More time you end up critiquing, more critiquing than actually learning anything from them. But it's part of the job.
Yeah, and that's right. But you do learn a lot. You learn a lot from bad manuscripts in terms of what makes them bad. And I think one of the messages that we're trying to get out is if you read the title and you read the abstract, that is not necessarily the same take-home message as reading the actual paper. That there's a lot of stuff put into those abstracts that we see circulated online that is either not supported by the conclusions or it's just inaccurate. So there are good papers out there, but boy, be very cautious.
Yeah. So this is usually the time of the podcast where I ask for a take-home message. I don't know if that necessarily fits with this episode, so maybe I'll ask differently or a different question. In if different groups or I don't know if it's clinics or producer groups or industry or whatever want to get involved in this program, is there an opportunity for that, and how would they do so?
Yeah, absolutely. Looking for greater participation. So that can be in a number of ways. So veterinarians and producers willing to host farmhouse students. So that's the summer student program. If producers or veterinarians know foreign trained veterinarians that would be suitable for the residency program, that would be another way to get involved. Financial support, obviously. We're willing to take donations from individuals or corporations. Producers at this point in time, in Western Canada at least, have contributed through the pork boards across Western Canada, but we're happy to take additional donations as well. And all of those then are used to help support the programs that we've got. So those would be very much welcome. And then the fourth way of involvement would be through some of the courses that we will have to develop for the foreign trained veterinarians. That some of those will have to be in areas that are certainly outside my direct expertise. So it could be in nutrition, could be in economics, could be in production, could be in reproduction, so things like that. So there will be a call kind of for expertise outside of veterinary medicine down the road, and kind of in the areas that swine veterinarians need to know something about. They don't need to be experts, but they need to be able to carry a conversation on about those different topics. So, keep posted with that, and, I'll be reaching out to various individuals in the future.
Yeah, great. So hopefully somebody's listening that wants to get involved, and we'll take you up on that.
It's time for our famous three.
So before I let you go, we have our final three questions. So our
the dreaded three questions. I got prepped on these. Thank goodness.
Okay, good. As long as you're prepped for them. So, okay, our first question is, what is your favorite swine or animal related resource?
Yeah, and I'm going to play the nerd on this one, to be honest. I spent a lot of time in the last while actually reading Diseases of Swine. So Diseases of Swine is the textbook of swine diseases. It's got multiple chapters even outside of swine veterinary medicine, but I spent a pile of time reading that for various reasons. So that's my favorite resource at this point in time.
Fair enough. I don't think that's going to surprise anybody. So our next question gives you a little bit more leeway, I think. So what is your favorite book or resource outside of animal science?
Outside of animal sciences, I would say that's varied at this point in time, and kind of I think it's focused on two different areas. So I enjoy following the economy. Surprise, surprise. So what the Federal Reserve is doing, where the economy is going, where inflation is going, strategic investments, things like that. So I spend a lot of my night before bedtime reading is basically on that. And to be honest, it puts me to sleep in about 15 minutes, which is just about ideal. The other thing I get involved is I live on a habitat for Western painted turtles in BC. So I spend a lot of time actually reading turtle biology, Western painted turtle biology, learning about their breeding season, their cycles, habitat development, and rehabilitation. Because we've got a project here in the community that we're trying to rehabilitate breeding or nesting sites for the Western painted turtles. So yeah, they're pretty cool. Turtles rock, to be honest.
That might be one of the more interesting or unexpected responses to that question.
Yeah, we'll talk about that on another podcast sometime.
There you go. So, and then our final question is, when you look back at leaders that you've had or mentors, or when you worked with swine professionals, what is a characteristic that sets the successful ones apart from those that might not be as successful?
Yeah, in terms of leadership, what I would say is lead by example. So I've always kind of stated, I want to be the first one to arrive and I want to be the last one to leave, and I want to make sure I work all day, because you're setting your example for the people working with you. So that's what I'd say. The take-home message is lead by example.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, John. Well, it's been great having you on. A lot of good information, and like I said, I'm hoping that we get some uptake in it and help with the advancement of the program. And you said earlier it's not going to completely fill the need, but it is going to help, I think.
Yeah, I think so. So I think we'll continue. We're getting off to a good start this year, so I think it'll just continue to develop as time goes on. But do appreciate the opportunity to speak about it, and hopefully, if we've got some feedback from your viewers, they can get in touch with me.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.